Do you remember the fear that swept across the world in 2014? No place felt safe. The news was filled with brutal headlines and even more brutal videos of hostages being taken, lined up, and beheaded for not submitting to the new caliphate. ISIS swept through Iraq and Syria, declaring the new caliphate the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. It was a level of barbarian brutality on a scale that the world had not seen for a long time. Fear struck the heart of Americans because Americans knew that if they could only cross the two shining seas, they would be glad to do the same in our homeland. Military leaders commented that ISIS was the most evil movement in recent history. Army Lieutenant General Stephen J. Townsend said, "ISIS is the most evil entity I have encountered in my lifetime." Further, he says, they did not hide their atrocities. They tortured, beheaded, and burned those who did not agree with them. They posted the evidence of their evil for the world to see on social media. They enslaved millions under their twisted ideology. The point of this story is not to delve into the reasons why this did or didn't happen, but to shine the light on heroes who face down evil with courage, who lead towards gunfire, who rescue the innocent, whose lives were risked or given to protect the lives of those they swore to protect. Operation Inherent Resolve was the military campaign of the United States and coalition forces launched to eliminate ISIS from Iraq and Syria. In 2015, 75 Kurdish hostages were being held in an ISIS compound. Special operations units were planning, rehearsing, and preparing a hostage rescue operation. Then they received word that fresh graves had been dug near the compound and that all hostages were going to be killed. These are the moments of danger and urgency where rare heroes rise to the occasion. His grandfather served in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. His father was a police officer. Two brothers serve in the Air Force and in the Army. Service to country ran through the family's veins. Post 9/11 terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center, 18-year-old Thomas Patrick Payne enlisted in the Army, quickly becoming an Army Ranger and elite Special Forces warrior. He continues to serve, having amassed 17-plus deployments in his long military career. Have we lost this patriotic sense of duty today? What a beautiful family example. Consider for a moment the value of a strong heritage. There is no doubt that generations of warfighters and great public servants create great warfighters and great public servants. Yet a strong heritage is much less common than it used to be now. Some of you who are listening will have much to overcome from a weak heritage. However, would you receive the encouragement that you can be the first in the chain of a strong heritage? You have the choice for it to begin with you. After all, someone made a choice in every strong heritage for it to begin with them. In 2010, in Afghanistan, Payne was badly injured by a grenade blast, earning him a Purple Heart. His knee was completely crushed. Doctors told him that he may never be able to bend his knee again. As most heroes go, he would not accept that as his new reality. He began rehab, supported by his parents and the woman who he met in the process who became his wife, Allison. He regained mobility and strength. Just 2 years later, him and his teammate won the 2012 Army's Best Ranger competition, one of the most grueling competitions in our country, testing tactical prowess, physical endurance, and mental toughness. Having overcome the odds of his physical injury, his most heroic acts were yet to come. With 75 Kurdish hostages held by ISIS in Iraq, the Special Operations Forces boarded helicopters after midnight in one of the largest hostage rescue operations in U.S. military history. Upon landing, they were immediately engaged in heavy fire. Payne led one team into one of the buildings, and another team went for hostages in a different building. Payne and his team cut through the locks on multiple cells, releasing hostages and subduing the enemy. Soon after, they received word that the second team was taking heavy fire, so with hardly a thought, they moved to get into the fight. They ascended onto the roof of the building. At this point, the building was engulfed in flames. Suicide bombers were igniting their vests. The building was beginning to collapse around them. Somehow, through bombs, enemy fire, heavy smoke, and a burning building, they located another group of hostages who were going to die in the flames if not rescued. Payne took bolt cutters while under enemy fire and cut one lock. At this point, orders were given for them to leave the building and return to the choppers. The situation was too dangerous. If he or any of his team remained any longer, it was likely they were all going to die. Payne rejected those orders. He ran outside the building to get fresh air because the heat and smoke were unbearable. After quickly catching his breath, he ran back into the building not once but 3 different times, freeing the final large group of hostages. He was the last to leave the building, checking one last time to ensure that it was clear and all hostages had made it to safety, all the while under enemy fire. The helicopters were so full of those who were rescued that the operators had to stand for the full flight to safety. Now, unless you've been in this situation, it seems impossible to imagine, both from the side of the heroics of the American forces and also from the perspective of the hostages. Imagine being a hostage who is doomed to die when in the middle of the night the baddest warriors on the planet show up to set you free. Reports of some breaking down in tears, others jubilant, but I imagine many gripped by shock as they fled for their freedom under gunfire. From the operator's standpoint, they had successfully completed the greatest hostage rescue in military history. However, they were quickly informed that Master Sergeant Josh Wheeler was killed in action, leading the team that Payne's team arrived to support. Master Sergeant and heroics of his own. His last words as they headed straight for enemy gunfire to his team: "On me." We are forever indebted to his service and to the sacrifice of his wife, who lost her husband on this dreadful day. Thomas Patrick Payne is a Delta Force legend today. To heighten the significance of his heroics, he became the first living Delta Force member to receive the Medal of Honor for going above and beyond the call of duty to ensure all hostages' lives were saved. 75 hostages were rescued. 20-plus ISIS terrorists were killed. Payne's humility has been on display ever since. He never stops reminding the world that he had a team present and active in order for this operation and his many others to be successful, and that they lost one of Delta Force's great leaders that day, Master Sergeant Josh Wheeler. I believe the story to be true about him because until recently I was not aware of this heroic story. As Payne continues to serve quietly, instructing and training the next generation of America's most elite fighting forces. Is there a lesson here for all of us when receiving honor? How many of us have achieved anything alone? For others, like myself, I'm challenged by his level of bravery, but also encouraged to deal with physical adversity head on. Payne's story gives strength to endure physical ailments and hardships with hope and effort, not allowing the physical adversity to have the last word. Sergeant Major Payne served in 17-plus combat deployments. His heroics in 2015 were his 14th. This was not a once-off heroic act, but the fruit of the character built from service in Operation Iraqi Freedom, Enduring Freedom, New Dawn, and Inherent Resolve. Each deployment with multiple engagements across a broad spectrum of war. The consistency of his service over time is a challenge to a consistent patriotic duty to build up our nation and to serve for its freedoms. I hope, as you listen to these stories, your gratitude for freedom's price increases. It's never been, nor will it ever be free. Those Kurdish hostages know that someone died to set them free. They know that they had no hope apart from American forces being willing to give up their lives in order to set them free. They know that many more of the world's greatest warriors could have died for their deliverance from the most brutal enemy in recent history. One important question, America. Do you know? Thank you to Payne and all of your team members whose names we will likely never know, and especially to Master Sergeant Josh Wheeler and his family, for he gave all. Think about it. Thank you for listening. Please like, follow, or subscribe in order to help us bring more content just like this to help preserve freedom for future generations. As always, this content is brought to you by the Old Glory Coin Token. If you want to support our effort to preserve freedom for the next generation, please consider holding the Old Glory Coin Token and sending these messages along to people you know who want to do the same.